Welcome to the Cybele Health Podcast, where we share science-backed tools and expert insights to empower women's health and elevate their lives. Welcome everyone to the new episode of Cybele Health Podcast. Today we have Mariane Bekker with us. Welcome Mariane to the podcast.
So happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Sure. Mariane is a tech executive with over a decade of experience building high-performance teams and engineering environment for the big and small companies like New Relic and Mindbody. She's currently managing partner at Founders Bay, a premium venture studio for AI startups here in the Bay Area. She connects a community of 20,000 founders and VCs through engaging events, expert guidance, mentorship, and fundraising resources. On the other side, Mariane also runs Women Founders Bay, one of the largest community of female tech entrepreneur in the Bay Area, providing a lot of resources, mentorship, networking opportunities to empower women in the Bay Area. Wow, this is really fascinating. First of all, thank you for the work that you are doing to empowering women. I'm a big fan. Tell me a little more about how did you ended up in this entrepreneurship environment and journey? I know that your background is also in engineering, so tell us a little bit more about you.
So it was completely by accident. So I started my career as a software engineer. Then I grew into an engineering manager, an engineering leader. And then at my last job, I was at Mindbody. I was heading their SF Pune and New York office. And I've dreamt of always building a team of 50% women engineers. Because when I studied software engineering in college, I was oftentimes the only woman in the building. When I moved to the Bay Area, it was the same thing. I always found myself the only woman of color in every room that I went to. So I've dedicated the majority of my career to making tech more diverse. So at Mindbody, for 2 years, we had a mission of building a truly diverse team. And at the end, our team consisted of 55% women engineer to men engineer. And then every single woman we ended up promoting. So after Mindbody, I decided to really take all the learnings that I had about building a diverse team and have a bigger impact on the tech industry. So I started Upward Recruiting. And Upward Recruiting is a talent agency on a mission to making tech more diverse by helping companies hire more women engineers. And our philosophy is that if you put a woman at a fast-growing startup, her career is going to grow and we're going to get more women in tech leadership position. So it was my mission that drove me to start this company. I didn't really see myself as an entrepreneur. But this company, because of the mission, grew really fast. And suddenly I found myself as a founder. So then I wanted to meet other founders to learn from them. What does it take to scale a business? How do you run a business beyond engineering? And I started going to different tech events. And again, similarly to engineering, I would find myself the only woman in the room. So then I started asking myself and I started asking people around me, well, where are the women founders? And it was hard to get that response. And I wanted to build that community for myself as well. So that's when I decided to start my own community of tech female founders, Women Founders Bay. And that's how I got into entrepreneurship.
Wow, amazing. Thank you for doing that. We definitely need that. Even when I started this journey about a year or 2 years ago, I felt like this is only me. Every room I went to, even a big corporate, especially when you go into engineering, you still see that women are a minority in the rooms. So that's really great that you're doing this. The society definitely needs that. So this is also a question that I've been asked a lot. And As part of Cybele Health, which we are focusing on promoting women's wellness, one pillar of wellness is definitely your career and making sure that the work that you're doing, you're progressing in your career and you're, improving your skills. And Since I went through this journey, people often come to me and ask that, how did you do the transition from working 9 to 5 in a big corp where you have so much stability into a very unknown world of entrepreneurship? And I want you to explain, based on your experience, that what do you think are the most critical factors for success when launching a tech startup, or particularly as a female founder?
Zara, and I think you are spot on. When you transition from this 9 to 5 to having your own company, it's a completely different type of skill set. First off, you need to be resilient and you need to be good with uncertainty because you don't know when your next paycheck is gonna come. Some days, maybe in the morning, you get 10 clients, and then in the afternoon, you lose 20 clients. And this roller coaster of emotion of being an entrepreneur is something that you have to get used to, and you have to be okay with the uncertainty that comes with it. One factor that I saw of female founders who did raise funding that really helped them is them having a large network of investors, of founders, of mentors. And the reason why this is so important is because one of the main things that you need to grow your startup is capital. And unfortunately, women are still receiving less than 2% of all the funding going to VC backed startups. And those women, how they were able to kind of bridge that is that they early on started by building their network of VCs. They started going to events, they started asking for warm intros, and even before fundraising, they had a list of 100 to 150 investors that they could reach to, so they can pitch their startup. So I think that three things that I saw successful entrepreneurs have: one, resilience; two, being okay with uncertainty and being able to figure it out even when they don't know what they should do next; and three, having a big network of investors and founders supporting them.
Great, awesome. Yeah, definitely. So, one part of being in, stepping into entrepreneurship is the ability to lead, and the leadership skills. That's something that, could be a very important factor in terms of your success of your startup. And this is something that you can, practice that while you're at your job. So I know that you were a leader or a manager at your previous works. What advice basically do you have for women to grow their leadership skills?
Definitely. So I can tell you a little bit about my personal story. When I started as a software engineer, I knew that I wanted to become a manager fairly early on because I wanted to have an impact on other people's life, and I want to help grow their career as well, particularly women. One of the things that I did, so within a year, I got promoted from junior engineer to senior engineer. And then within 2 years, I became a head of engineering. And the way that I did it is that I always asked for more. I asked for bigger project, more complicated project. Even when I was an intern, I asked for the management job because I wasn't scared to just ask for two level ahead of me. And you know what? Maybe I received 100 no's, but I didn't need 100 yeses. All I needed was one yes or two yes to really make that jump from junior to mid-level to senior. And I got them very early on because I asked so much that question. And another thing is that I always looked for opportunities to grow, to challenge myself, and to learn more. So anytime there was a project, and even though I did not necessarily have the skill set to take on that project, I still asked for it. And then after 9 to 5, I learned. I was learning, I was reading books, I was watching videos, I was reading articles, I was talking to people to learn what it takes to be successful in that project. So one of the things that I recommend is, one, always look for opportunities to grow. I know it's comfortable sometimes to just stay where you are, and there's comfort in that, right? But challenge yourself when you're in a non-comfortable position, or when you're taking a project that you don't feel 100% ready. That's really when you grow. And the third thing is always ask for more, ask for that promotion, ask for this salary bump. The worst case that they can tell you is no. That's it. It's just a no. The best case is a yes, and suddenly your career went through the roof.
Sure, sure. So you touch upon a very good topic of promoting for yourself. And that's a big part of stepping into entrepreneurship. You have to promote yourself in so many levels because not only you have to convince investors to, bet on you and, trust in you, you also have to convince other people to join your team, especially early on. I mean, this is just an idea. You have to convince your customers to use your product, so there are so many levels. But but early on, the first time that you wanted to ask for a raise or a promotion, which you knew it was like higher level, how did you frame it? How did you ask? There's a lot of hesitations, fears of hearing no's is really valid and true. And I also experienced that myself, but I quickly realized that I have to do it no matter what. I have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. But I'm curious to know what was your experience? How did you know, how did you ask for it? How did you convince yourself that you can do it?
Definitely. So I asked for it the first job out of college. I moved here to the Bay Area from Montreal. I had an incredible manager that supported me. And then during that year, I took it to myself to start leading the project, to start doing more than she was asking. And I was always, if she asked for A, I would do A, B, and C. So a year from that, I already provided so much value to this team. And then I went to ask her. I told her, listen, I want to get the senior title, and that senior, and I deserve it because I've been leading the project. This is the result that I accomplished. I've released X number of features in this short period of time. So I had prepared my arguments in advance. And then I told her, listen, I know that we're at a startup and I know you don't have the budget to right now give me a raise in salary, but I don't care. I don't want the raise in salary. I just want to get the title because I've been doing that job for the last few months. So a few things that you can learn from that. One, note down all of your accomplishment that you've been doing for the last year, but not only your accomplishment, but also the result that came with it, right? If, for example, you are coding and you did a feature and that feature got released, and because of that feature, revenue spiked by 5%. So you frame that problem where I contributed to the revenue spike. The second thing that is important is understanding in advance what are the reasons that they would say no to you. I understood that we were at a startup, we had a budget crunch, and I knew that one of the reasons was they will say no to my promotion because they don't have the budget right now to give me more money. So then I prepared kind of those answers before going to that talk. So I think if you advocate for yourself, if you already prepare yourself to that conversation, it'll go much, much more smoothly. And then actually, so I say this was the first time I asked for a promotion, but really the first time. And this was crazy. And I realized that I should not have asked for that. I did an internship in college. And during that internship, I also tried to go above and beyond. My project was supposed to be 3 month time. I finished it in 1 month. At the end of that internship, my manager came to me and he's like, would you like to come back when you graduate? And then I'm like, well, I'm looking for an engineering manager position when I graduate. So this was crazy. I mean, I didn't even
Why not?
worked. Why not? And then, you know what? He said, okay, well, we can offer you that. But that manager had huge respect for me because I asked for it. And even until now, he's still my mentor. And if I approach him for anything, he will respond to me. So you have nothing to lose. Worst case, people will say no, but they will gain a lot of respect to you.
Sure.
For
Yeah, yeah. Very lovely. Yeah, I really love it when women, ask for more, because I feel like maybe culturally, we've been limited a lot, and that has become part of our unconscious, bias towards we have to say yes, we have to be perfect, everything has to be, according to some level of standards. But I also want to plus on that, even a big corporate, when you want to ask for raise, there are lots of limits and rules and regulations and, the salary category and all of that. But even for me, when I asked for a raise after 2 years, I said, I came as PhD, I want to be a manager, I want to be promoted. First of all, they said no, of course, because of so many things. But then I kept insisting. I said, okay, what do you need from me? And then we created a list. And then every 3 months, I made that sure that we are on the same page and I'm the track, and me and my manager are both, on the same page. And everything that things changes, like project gets canceled or roadmaps get changed all the time. But I made sure that these ones are not impacting me or my career plan. Um, so another thing, I agree totally with everything that you said, but another thing is that you have that conversation upfront and much in advance and have a plan for it. And then on a regular basis, every few months, make sure that you and your manager are on the same page according to that. Great, awesome. So switching back to the entrepreneurship, this is something that also personally I faced since I started, and you also touch up on that. The women in entrepreneurship like take a very tiny slice of this pie. But I want you to know from your experience that women founders often face a lot of challenges other than fundraising. But what strategies do you recommend for them when it comes to overcoming those challenges? And if there is anything specific that you know that they should be aware of that.
Yeah, definitely. The first off, we face a lot of challenges, and a lot of them is bias that we face at every step of building our startup. One of the biggest bias that happens is when we are pitching our startup idea. So there's a study that was made at Harvard last year that basically evaluated how women are pitching to investors, and they compared it to how men are pitching to investors. And even though both pitch the same way, and even though if you compare the startup, they're at the same stage and they're kind of in the same industry, when investors go to ask questions to those founders, when they ask questions to the men founders, basically what they're asking is very positive question, like, how are you going to be the next unicorn? When are you going to achieve profitability? When are you going to take 50% of the market? But then when they go and ask the questions to the women, they ask pessimistic question. How are you going to make sure you're not going bankrupt? What are you going to do if you don't receive any funding moving forward? So when the women are asked those questions, it puts them in a disadvantaged position because suddenly they're on the defensive. So one of the things that they saw help is when women actually reply to this question, but the reverse way. So when you hear, okay, how are you going to make sure you're not going to go bankrupt? Instead of trying to defend yourself, just answer by how are you going to be the next unicorn? So sell them the dream. Always be positive in your responsive, and that'll actually kind of counteract that bias. I have to say that it is very sad that we are facing those biases, but small things like that can give us an advantage. The second thing that we face is lack of network. So when I started in San Francisco, it was really hard to even find what founder events are happening or what VC events are happening. Typically, those events are invite only, they're very exclusive. And because there's not a lot of women in those events, then women are having a hard time figuring out even when or how they are happening. So then what I started doing is that every week I started reporting on all of the founder events that I learned from, that my friends learned about, that I got invited to. And then that newsletter grew to over 20,000 subscribers now. It's called newsletter.foundersbay.com. And then now women are receiving a list of all the events happening so that they can start building their network. And the third thing that women often face is that one, lack of resources, lack of mentorship. Luckily now there's a lot of programs out there that are helping them succeed. Like there's fundraising workshops. We at Women Founders Bay, every week we have a free workshop that we do for women, on go-to-market strategy, on fundraising. And also, we are trying to change this lack of network and lack of resources by providing them a free community that you are part of, Zara. And I love having you, by the way, in that community where they have
Okay.
500 women around them, helping them in whatever they need. And we are starting in San Francisco, we're expanding to LA, and we're going to also expand to New York and hopefully globally.
Wow, awesome, amazing. Yes, definitely being part of a network and um, having a community around you, especially those who share the same values and the same mission, is very important. But you also touch up on selling the dream, right? And I think that especially in the startup, you have to be able to tell a story which is about a big dream, something that does not exist yet. But that big dream is not very far. It is accessible and it is reachable, and that's why you can do that, and that's why people should trust you. And part of that, I believe, resonates with the personal branding. And personal branding, not only in startups, but also when you are working, 9 to 5, is also important to build your brand so you get the promotion. Promotions and going up to the ladder is also related to your branding. So I want to know your perspective and your take on that. How important is personal branding for founders, but especially for women, and what are the key steps that women can take to build that strong personal brand?
Personal brand is everything now. And the reason why is whether we like it or not, we have one of the most powerful distribution tool at our fingertips, and that's social media. With social media, to grow your company, if you have an audience, you're already starting at a huge advantage because you have the audience to be able to sell your product, to be able to pitch to investors, to be able to get your customers or your mentors or your allies. So personal branding helps you in gaining social media traction. One of the things that I always recommend for your personal brand is, let's say you are building a startup and you're building it in the healthcare field, for example. Well, your personal brand should be tied to your startup and your mission and your story. Why did you start building the startup? Why are you building in healthcare? Maybe because you experienced an issue, or a close relative experienced a disease that you really care about. So then your personal brand, you're gonna start it by kind of bridging your startup and your mission at the same time. So what I started doing for my personal brand is that I wanted to build this women founder community. So I started talking about issues that women founders experience, right? Like the lack of capital, the lack of diversity in tech. And because I was talking about issues that my target audience wanted to learn more about, they found me. And I gained so much traction just because of that. So find who your target audience is, find your personal story, start sharing it, and they will find you. And that's how you build a personal brand. The second thing to note as well is, when you are building your personal brand, you want to focus on a few social media network, because if you try to grow everywhere, it's going to be really hard to kind of split your time. And the reason why is because every social media network, like Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, is a different skill set. It's a different avenue to express your mission. So, for example, on Twitter, it's very, very short sentences. But to be successful on Twitter, you have to constantly be engaging. You constantly have to put tweets out. So it takes a lot of time during your day to do that. If you want to be successful on Instagram, it's all about the quality of the pictures that you take. So if you are building a startup that is very visual, then it would make sense to go on Instagram. LinkedIn, it's longer form text. So if you love writing, for example, I love writing way more than being on camera. So for me, LinkedIn works best. But if you love doing videos, you love editing, you love being on camera, then TikTok would be your channel. So really find the social media that appeals to you, where your target audience lives. And then once you have that, start sharing your story that will attract them to your personal brand.
Okay, cool, awesome. Like lots of valuable information. So you mentioned that you work with women founders, and through these years that you've been working and involved, I was wondering, do you see any trend or shift that has been happening, or any new opportunities or support specifically for women in a startup ecosystem?
Yeah, so I am seeing more and more women going into VC, and more women going into VC specifically because they want to support women founders. And that's what I love about working with women is that every single one of them has a mission to make the world a better place, and they know that they want to support each other. So I've seen so many fund managers start their own fund because they want to help women and they want to put more money into women's hands. So that's huge for us because it means that we suddenly have a pool of capital available to us to go and pitch to grow our startup and to get the funding that we need. The second trend that I'm seeing is that I see so many women now going into health tech and femtech specifically because for so long female health has been kind of ignored and not even studied by medical professional. So I'm seeing tons of women waking up to that reality because maybe they experienced something in the medical field that made them feel like, what, there's no solution for my needs. And I represent 50% of the population. So femtech is huge. The third trend, and that's something that I would love to see more women in, and that's building AI. And the reason why is because now AI is really going to disrupt all the industries that we have, whether it's healthcare, whether it's climate tech, whether it's automotive. So now is the time for women to start building AI companies so we are not left behind, especially in healthcare, all the drug discovery, all the mental health. There's so much opportunities to build a startup, and now is the best time to do that. And the fourth trend that I see with women specifically, so we have now 500 startups, all female founded in our Women Founders Bay community, is that every single one of them started a company to make the world a better place. And I love that. Like every story is, I want to help someone who is like my mother. I want to help someone who is like my friend who had experienced this issue. I want to help the environment. I want to help people who are disadvantaged. I want to help people of color. And I love that about women. They have a powerful story and they are doing this really because they want to change the world.
Awesome, awesome. Yes, definitely AI is everywhere, and this is also the future is going to change, and we're not sure about exactly which direction, but definitely AI is going to be one important part of it. And that's why I started talking about all the women. You have to learn AI. Um, AI might not replace your job completely, but people who know how to use AI in their current role will be on the front row and they get very advantages. So that's why everybody from any spectrum has to learn how to apply that. And there are so many courses online and at universities. You can, get a understanding about how everything works, and then now go deeper related to your field. So definitely learn AI. That's the first homework. um, so I was wondering, now that you work with lots of female founders, is there any success story that you personally like, and you can tell us about, the journey that this female founder went through, and then, maybe the challenges, and then the happy ending, the
Yeah,
success?
definitely. So I'm going to talk about one who is building in deep tech AI. She is building a AI model for law firms. So when she started her journey, she had just moved to the Bay Area. So she did not have a large network. And that was approximately a year ago. But then she started going to events almost every week. She grew her network so fast within a year that she now probably knows almost every investor and founder in the Bay Area, and they already know about her. Like anytime I go to an event, they're like, "Oh, have you heard about her?" And I'm like, "Yes, of course I heard about her. She is awesome." And then she wanted to raise funding for her startup. She already has really good traction. And then the issue that she faced is that she had now the investor list to pitch. So finding investors was not a hard thing for her to do because she had built her network. And then she was pitching almost every day, 10 times a day. And to get investment, you need to pitch maybe to 100 investors to get one yes. And that's very, very typical. And if you hear 99 no's, it's very easy to say, well, you know what? There's something that I'm doing that is wrong, or maybe I'm not building the right thing. I will never do that. But really, that's the game that you have to play when pitching. You have to get 99 no's to get one yes. So she was pitching maybe every week for probably 8 weeks. And every time I would see her, she would be exhausted because she would be pitching every day, maybe 10 times a day. And finally, she got a yes, and then she got more yeses, and those investors who said yes to her. Typically when investors say yes to you, they will introduce you to other investors in their network who are also going to say yes, because they kind of co-invest together. And now she was able to get a commitment of $1 million for her startup, which is very, very exciting. And now she has the money to really spend on engineering resources, to spend on her go-to-market strategy. And I'm very proud about how she approached it. She went from zero network to now $1 million in her bank account.
Nice, amazing. One thing that I think women have is the resilience
Exactly.
and multitasking. Everybody asks me, how do you manage work and life? And I have two little kids. I said, multitasking. And you become master at it when you become a woman, but it's another level when you start your company. You adapt to that, and then you can do that. Well, thank you so much, Marianne, for joining us. Do you have any final words for especially those women who are considering and thinking about maybe transitioning their career into entrepreneurship? What would be your biggest piece of advice for them
I
to
would
make that happen?
I would say just do it. If you have an idea that you're so passionate about, start building it. You have nothing to lose, because if you have an idea and you're always debating in your head, you're not really learning anything. But if you put it out there, if you start building your personal branding, if you start building your startup, whether it succeeds or fail, it doesn't matter at the end, because you would have learned so much in that process. So don't be afraid. You're not alone now. You have a community of 500 women supporting you. You can go to womenfoundersbay.com/apply, and we'll be there for you. We'll support you in your journey. Just do it, and you never know. You're going to be the next unicorn. I believe in you.
Awesome, thank you. So you mentioned about womensfounderbay.com/apply for them to go and apply, but what do you look for in the applications? Give us some hints.
So I always say, exclusivity is the killer of inclusivity. So the only thing that we look for is that whether you are serious about your idea, whether you have already a website or you have a company page, something that proves that you are working on it. And that's the only thing that we are looking for. We want to welcome all the women founders who are building a tech company. Right now, because of a lot of demand, we have a wait list of over 200, but we are trying to build our team on our end to process your application as soon as possible.
Great, awesome. One follow-up question. This
Yes.
is also something that I've been told and I've been asked a lot about building the team early on, especially co-founder. So being on the other side of the table as an investor, what is your take on the co-founders? Do you think that solo entrepreneurs have a chance to win, especially with this hard climate? And second, especially for women, where do you think, which approach do you think they have to take to find the right co-founder? And
Yeah.
that's the
So
last question, I promise.
there's a lot of there's there's a lot of debate about that, right? Where they say, okay, well, you have to have a co-founder to get funding, you have to find the right person. But the reality is it's very hard to find a co-founder, because you need to find someone who shares the same passion as you do about the problem that you are solving. And then they have to have skill set that complement you. And the third thing is you have to get along with this person, because this is a 10-year journey. So it's very, very hard to find that. So if you don't find a co-founder, I wouldn't discourage you from trying to do your startup. You just need to figure out what skill sets you don't have and find either a founding engineer or a founding employee or an advisor that has has that skill set. So then when you go and pitch to investors and they ask you, okay, well, do you have a co-founder? You say no, but I have an advisor that is an expert in that field and that can help us approach that problem that we will be facing. The other side, if you really want a co-founder and you're like, no, I really need to find a co-founder, a thing that I do suggest is go to events. If you're looking for engineering talent, go to hackathon, go where the engineers are at and network with those folks, get to know them, and then try to work with them for 2-3 weeks before signing anything, because co-founder mismatch is probably one of the biggest reasons that a startup fail. So make sure that you worked with them before signing any kind of paper.
Great, awesome. Yes. Um, Thank you again for joining this episode of podcast. I really appreciate your time and I already learned a lot from you. And then please keep doing what you're doing. Our community really needs, women like you to promote and advocate and pave the way for the other women to step into this important, um, era of entrepreneurship and, career transition.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I'm so happy that you're part of our community. We can continue growing that together.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That was the end of our episode. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned lots of good information and you do the best in terms of making that transition. Until next time, take care of yourself.